Hey Misfits, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Shaunacorn, or Sean, of Shaunacorn Mind Shift Coaching, a trauma recovery coach. I'm certified health and life coach, trauma-informed care practitioner, and a therapeutic arts facilitator. And I've been quiet for a while. And that's not because I didn't see what was happening. It was because I was angry, enraged, actually, overwhelmed, afraid. And I knew if I spoke from that place, I would risk doing the very thing I never want to do. Further overwhelm, confuse, or harm people who are already carrying too much. People listen to me. I don't take that lightly. I waited to speak until I was regulated enough to do so, with clarity, responsibility, and care. Not because the situation became less terrifying. It's because I became more capable of speaking without spreading despair or fear. I wasn't able to educate from a dysregulated place. I could only react. And reaction, even when well-intended, can cause harm. That matters deeply in a moment like this, because trauma is trauma, whether it happens in a home, a relationship, a workplace, or at a societal level. Trauma overwhelms the nervous system. It narrows perception. It impairs logic. It floods us with fear, rage, helplessness, and urgency. When we speak while overwhelmed, our words often come from despair rather than discernment, from panic rather than pattern recognition. And dysregulated voices, even compassionate ones, can unintentionally escalate fear, reinforce hopelessness, or strip people of their sense of agency. This moment is terrifying. It is enraging. I am not pretending otherwise. Naming reality matters. Yet, how we speak about reality matters just as much. Fear without context becomes paralysis. Rage without direction becomes chaos. Neither of those help people understand what is happening or what to do with what they're feeling. Education does. Trauma-informed education gives people language for what their bodies already know. It helps them make sense of why they feel frozen, overwhelmed, angry, confused, or numb. It restores logic without dismissing emotion. It creates space for truth without feeding hysteria. I waited because I refused to contribute to noise when what people need is clarity. I waited because I wanted my voice to be steady, not inflamed. I waited because speaking responsibly, especially when others are listening, is a part of ethical leadership. And now that I can speak from regulation, not calm indifference, but a grounded clarity, I want to talk about what's happening through a trauma lens. Not to convince, not to persuade, yet to educate, to help people understand why this feels the way that it does, why so many are struggling to process it, and how trauma, unaddressed, compounded, and exploited, impacts us all. So, the trauma lens, why this feels so overwhelming, and why this matters. When people speak, why does this feel so overwhelming? The answer is not weakness. It's trauma. Many of us are already carrying unresolved trauma from childhood, relationships, systems, workplaces, institutions. Trauma doesn't just disappear because time passes. It lives in the body. It shapes how we respond to threat, authority, uncertainty, and fear. When trauma is activated repeatedly, crisis after crisis, headline after headline, loss after loss, the nervous system becomes overwhelmed. Logic narrows. Discernment gets so much harder. The brain shifts into survival mode. This is when people freeze, dissociate, deny, comply, or cling to whoever appears powerful, confident, or certain. That isn't stupidity. That isn't moral failure. That is how trauma works. Abusive dynamics rely on intelligence. They rely on overwhelm. In abusive relationships, control is rarely obvious at first. It often shows up as protection, as certainty, as someone claiming they alone can fix the problem, define the threat, or restore order. Fear is amplified. Blame is redirected. Accountability disappears. And gradually, people are stripped of their sense of agency until they no longer trust their own perception. These same dynamics scale. When power is centralized, when harm is minimized or denied, when blame is shifted onto others, when chaos is followed by relief and then more chaos, when voices are silenced or discredited, these are not random behaviors. They are recognizable patterns to anyone who has lived through abuse. And here's the part that's uncomfortable to say out loud. People who have been abused are often more vulnerable to abusive systems. Not because they are weak. It's because abuse conditions the nervous system to equate power with safety and compliance with survival. Abuse teaches people to doubt themselves, to defer judgment, to freeze when something feels wrong, to tolerate harm far longer than anyone should. That conditioning doesn't vanish just because the setting changes from home to a government or an institution. This is why facts alone don't break through. This is why evidence can exist and still not register. This is why people can sense that something is wrong and still feel unable to act or even fully look. Trauma overwhelms. And overwhelm is fertile ground for manipulation. So this is why people follow blindly. Survival responses, not stupidity. When people follow blindly, it's tempting to explain it is as ignorance or moral failure. That explanation feels satisfying, and it's also incomplete. What we're often witnessing is overwhelmed. The brain shifts away from nuance and complexity. Complexity. Damn. Survival mode prioritizes certainty, simplicity, and perceived safety. In that state, people gravitate towards whoever sounds confident, decisive, and authoritative, especially when the world feels chaotic and unpredictable. This is not because people stop thinking. It's because their bodies stop feeling safe enough to think. Trauma narrows options. It reduces tolerance for ambiguity. It creates an urgent need for order, even if that order is harmful. When someone promises control, clarity, or protection, it can feel like relief, even when the cost is high. Add to that chronic stress, economic insecurity, social isolation, information overload, repeated crises, not enough food, on, and the nervous system becomes exhausted. Exhausted people don't choose well. Not because they don't care. It's because they're depleted. They cling to certainty because uncertainty feels unbearable. They outsource discernment because discernment requires energy they no longer have. This is how abuse gains followers, not through logic, but through relief. Understanding this isn't about excusing harm. It's about recognizing vulnerability so it can't be exploited further. Trauma bonds at scale. Oh, that was the title of this. Trauma bonds at scale, how harmful loyalty is created. I've put them in sections and I forgot. Rolling on. Where was I? Hold please. Trauma bonding doesn't only happen in romantic or family relationships. It can happen in workplaces, religious institutions, communities, and entire societies. A trauma bond forms when harm is paired with intermittent relief. chaos followed by calm, fear followed by reassurance, threat followed by protection. This cycle creates attachment, not because the environment is safe, it's because the relief feels essential. The nervous system begins to associate the source of harm with survival itself. At scale, this looks like intense fear followed by promises of safety, instability followed by temporary order, punishment followed by selective protection, harm minimized or justified as necessary. Over time, people become emotionally invested in the very system that hurts them because their nervous systems are conditioned to believe that survival depends on staying aligned with it. Trauma bonds are powerful because they override logic. They create loyalty without trust, attachment without safety, defense without discernment. Breaking a trauma bond, personal or collective, is destabilizing. It often brings grief, fear, anger, shame, confusion. And did I say fear before? Fear. That's why many people resist looking too closely. The cost of seeing the truth can feel higher than the cost of staying bonded. But trauma bonds are not destiny. They dissolve through awareness, regulation, and reconnection to agency, not through force, ridicule, or shame. So, what does grounded resistance actually look like? Grounded resistance is not hysteria. It is not constant outrage. It is not losing yourself in fear. Grounded resistance begins in the nervous system. It looks like staying regulated enough to think clearly, refusing to accept distorted narratives, naming harm without becoming consumed by it, staying connected to your values instead of reacting to every provocation, choosing truth over comfort, choosing clarity over chaos. Grounded resistance is slow, deliberate, and steady, which is why it's so threatening to abusive systems. It cannot be easily manipulated, dismissed, or redirected. It looks like education. It looks like community. It looks like asking better questions. It looks like refusing to hand over your agency even when you're afraid, especially when you're afraid. It looks like remembering that fear does not erase your power. This does not mean pretending things aren't dire. It means refusing to let your fear strip you of discernment, voice, or connection. It means responding instead of reacting. It means acting from alignment rather than despair. Abuse relies on dysregulation. Resistance thrives in clarity. And clarity, especially shared clarity, it's one of the most powerful tools we have. So, everything I've shared here is not meant to frighten you. Even though what we're living through is frightening. It's meant to help you understand why this moment feels so heavy, why your reactions make sense, and why your clarity feels harder to access than it should. This isn't about politics, a spectacle. It's about trauma. Personal, collective, unresolved, and compounded. Abuse thrives when people are overwhelmed, divided, exhausted, and disconnected from their own agency. It loses power when people understand the patterns, regulate their nervous systems, and remember that they are not powerless, even in frightening circumstances. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to react perfectly. You don't need to agree with everyone or convince anyone. You do deserve to understand what's happening to you, internally and externally, so you can respond instead of collapse, disengage, or hand your power to someone else. Awareness is not hysteria. Education is not fear-mongering. Naming harm is not the same as becoming consumed by it. Trauma can be interrupted. Patterns can be recognized. And that starts with clarity. So before you move on from this, I invite you to pause for a moment. Let's take a slow breath. Notice where you're holding your tension at. Feel your feet on the floor, the chair beneath you, the space you're in right now. If you're overwhelmed, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means your nervous system has been carrying far too much for far too long. If you're feeling angry, scared, numb, or confused, those are human responses to a prolonged stress and threat. You don't need to fix anything today. You don't need to carry this alone. You don't need to surrender your voice or your discernment. Stay connected to yourself, to your body, to people who value truth and care. Regulation is not disengagement. It's how we stay present enough to respond wisely. Fear tells us to shut down or hand our power away. Clarity helps us stay rooted, aware, and connected. Take care of your nervous system. Take care of each other. And remember, your voice, your awareness, and your agency still fucking matter. I love you, each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. I know it's hard out there. Stay safe.